This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Claire McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. This episode of Transqat is available in video format on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/@transcat9607 or just search for Transqat channel. That's TRANSQAT. Welcome back. Today's episode is a conversation with Robert LaRiviere and Brooklyn Campaign, the writer-director and producer, respectively, of the short film This Is Jan. The filmmakers have very generously set up a special screening for Transqat viewers and listeners. Today's episode drops on Friday, November 7th. You will have access to the film through Saturday, December 6th. That's a full month of free access to this short film. I recommend watching the film before you listen to our episode. The conversation does include spoilers. In fact, go do that now. I'll wait. Are you back? Good. I'm making it sound like watching the short film is homework. It isn't. You're getting a free movie just for being a transcatter. A transcateer, a transcatophile. Well, we'll workshop that and get back to you. I'll put a link in the show notes. I'll post about it on social media so you can get the link to Vimeo from either place. The password for this special limited time offer is Transqat 2025. That's TRANSQAT 2025.
Robert LaRiviere. I'm the writer and director of This Is Jan, short film we made last year. Brooklyn?
Hi, I'm Brooklyn Campaign. I am previously from New Orleans. I'm now in Florida. I am one of the producers on This Is Jan with Robert.
Underlying this short film, and it's never explicitly brought out, but it's there for people either to appreciate or not, is a place called Casa Susana. And I thought maybe, I'm guessing that most of my listeners are probably not familiar with that. So I thought maybe we should start there. What was Casa Susana?
Casa Susana was a place that existed in the Catskills in the 50s and 60s. It was started by a man named Tito and his wife. They owned a wig store in New York. It was a place for people to go and be themselves. I don't know what terminology was used in the day. References to Casa Susana refer to people as cross-dressers. A lot of them later on went on to transition. The only reason we know about Casa Susana is that someone found a box of pictures in a storage unit, and that probably were meant to be destroyed. They had an in-house photographer that took photographs of everyone and developed the pictures so that they could have a record for themselves of what happened there. And the people who went there were really diverse. Some of them were even married. Their wives would go there with them, and their wives would hang out together in one part of Casa Susana while the guys did their thing.
Your spoiler alert, you're briefly in the film.
Yes.
Your character, I think, introduces his wife.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought that was important since Jan in the film kind of, overtly lies to his wife about what's going on. I just wanted to know that there was a world where they could be happy together.
Casa Susana, in my experience, it showed up in an episode of Transparent. There's a wonderful, well, it looks like a wonderful book, but I can't afford it. It's like $55 every time I find it on Casa Susana. I'm hoping that at some point the price comes down so I can get it.
Yeah, I've seen that book. It's very expensive. It's all the pictures.
So Brooklyn, well, actually for both of you, but how did this project come about? Where did it start? Brooklyn, when did you get on board?
Well, I guess Robert's better to explain how it started, and then I can jump in.
Oh, I think actually, I'm going to punt this back to you. It all starts
with
Brooklyn. And go ahead and tell us the story about your transitioning.
So I went to college with Robert and his husband, and I didn't transition until I was just over 40. And so it was a later in life transition, you know, and growing up at a time when there wasn't any, well, I mean, internet came along later, but, you know, growing up as a young person, I didn't have, excuse me, I didn't have the internet. I didn't have ways of understanding even who I was. I feel like Jan's story is a little bit mine, different time, different setting, but the struggle, I think, is something I could relate to, especially having come up at a time when I didn't really know how to find myself. Yeah, and so then I transitioned. My friends all saw me go through it, and mine, I was not married. Well, I was actually. I was married to a man. And he was like one of my best friends at the time, and it wasn't as rough. I mean, it had its moments, it had its bumps, but you know, I had a pretty easy transition in my life in general because of where I was working and socially and things like that. It was very accepting. So I didn't have, I think, the deeper struggle that Jan might have had, but you know, it was still there. It's not easy, I think, at any age to have to make that choice. Um, but at the same time, you can't imagine never making that choice. It's weird. But and then Robert came to me at one point, how long ago? I don't remember because it started like years before it even got made. It felt like a couple years before.
Gosh, yeah, I think it's been 4 or 5 years when we wrote it.
Yeah.
So from
Yeah.
my perspective, Brooklyn was one of my favorite people. We went to college together briefly, actually, but one of those just solid lifelong friends. And when I saw her transition, which she announced to the world on Facebook that her name is now Brooklyn, I was so happy for her. A lot of things made sense to me. Nothing in the world makes more sense than Brooklyn being Brooklyn. And it set my creative mind on this journey about what life would have been like for her in a different time period. Like how wonderful that you can say to the world, this is who I am, and just have a clean swipe at it. Now everyone knows. So I put...
and not to interrupt, Robert, but to be able to do that and not lose family, job, healthcare, housing, right on down the line, that a life is still well within reach.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I think Brooklyn could speak to that. She does have a lot of support and is very much loved amongst her friends and community.
Family was not so successful. Um, but it had been that whole part of my life had been kind of bumpy anyway. I came from people that are very right-wing Christian, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but at the same time, it's, you know, it certainly made it a lot more difficult to exist as somebody in the LGBTQ umbrella. And then I think being a trans person was kind of something too far for them to be able to wrap their heads around. And you know, so family, I did really lose quite a bit. But my chosen family was all still around me and so supportive. And if that's the worst of it, then okay, I can handle it, you know?
All right. I am a studio exec. Give me the elevator pitch. You've got this idea for a short film. Ready? Go.
Are we talking about Jan?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, Brooklyn, go.
Time is money, LaRiviere.
Well, I mean, I think our hopes for Jan would be that we would continue to make queer films. Brooklyn and I, along with one of our other producers, have spun this farther into embracing this time period, 1950s New Orleans. There used to be a club here called Club My Oh My, out of many female impersonator clubs in New Orleans in that time period. But My Oh My was wildly popular. It was a tourist attraction. Gray Line Tours sold it in their pamphlets and brought buses out to it. And we created a world where the performers thrive and live this vibrant life inside the club, getting to be who they are. And then we explore their lives out in the real world, New Orleans 1950s, which was a little rough. So that's where we want to take Jan, is on this journey to New Orleans, 1950s.
Yeah.
There's a huge mafia element. It was owned by the mafia. It burned down 3 times, but this club survived from the 1930s through the 70s.
Wow.
And our story is kind of neat in that we have created characters that kind of run the gambit of people that, you know, are entertainers and they're doing it for the money. They're people that do it because they love it. There's somebody who is actually identifies as a trans woman who's working there and trying to find herself. So you get this gambit of characters within that world of female impersonation. So it's not just about people who do drag. It's, about people who work as entertainers. It's people who are trying to find themselves, people who just love what they do.
And it does sort of undo the threads on, Robert, you had mentioned before, language. It's really difficult to talk about things in the past with the vocabulary of the present. So there are people who perform in drag, and that's their job. There are people who, if you ask them, would identify as cis het, often married men who are finding ways to express the feminine through places like Casa Susanna. There are people who, in retrospect, might have been trans if they had had access to the healthcare and to the language. And because those words weren't really in the vernacular back in the 50s when this is set, it's hard to put labels on them.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big conversation that Brooklyn and I had. So when we wrote the original script for This Is Jan, Brooklyn was the first person I sent it to, and I think she read it in 20 minutes and called me immediately and said, I have lots of questions. And the big question was, who is this person? Are they a cross-dresser? Are they trans? Who is this person? That conversation was super important because I think it was the first time, although Brooklyn and I are close, she really told me her entire story. It opened up a lot. And I say that because it opened up a journey of us traveling together through this. Brooklyn was always the touchstone for Jan and was my final word on a lot of things. But this question of who is Jan was something I thought about, I think, for a year, if Brooklyn, and if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it took me a long time, and I finally had to come to terms, because it felt like coming to terms, that I would just have to say that I don't know. Because at the end of the film, Jan doesn't know. So if I'm going to be true to this character, I can't make a decision for her. In the end of our story, doesn't know where they're going. So I had to, as the director, decide that I don't know either, which is really hard for people to accept. I mean, outside of this circle, I think, Claire, from our previous conversations, you get that and you understand that. But people challenge me on that. Like, I have to make a decision for her. But go ahead.
No, I was going to just interject that I think I was telling my husband this last night. We were coming home and we were talking about, our conversation today. And I said, it is really hard for people today because things are so labeled and categorized to understand that uncertainty, that only somebody who's figuring themselves out can really, I think, fully understand. I remember being in that position of, what am I? Where do I fall in? I know I feel this and I feel that, and I think I'm this, but, and I had to explore so many things before I realized. I thought, well, maybe I just want to do drag. Maybe it's just the wanting to, put on the fabulous things and feel fabulous. But that wasn't it either. It's like you have to figure these things out. And I think it's harder for people today where people are like, I'm trans, I'm this, where we are so much farther along than it was in the 50s.
Yeah.
Where you have ways to discover yourself, that I think they want that. I think the uncomfortableness of the not knowing bothers people on some level. I don't think that they like the unresolvedness of it, her still being in that limbo stage. I think that's why people tend to want to challenge that. But I think it was the right decision because, like you said, Robert, Jan doesn't know who she is yet. She's still lying to her family. She's still trying to figure herself out. She's struggling emotionally with where she is, as we see right before she puts back on the wig and marches upstairs to
Yeah.
go meet some new friends. She's
There,
struggling. She was having a meltdown in that room with herself. So I think that uncomfortable decision, or that uncomfortable place is something I think more people feel, even if they're not trans. Figuring out who you are is a kind of uncomfortable journey. So I think that that's why it might trigger some people.
This episode of Transqat is sponsored by Fox and Feather Healing Arts Services. Some experiences and emotions are just too big for words alone. In art therapy, you use art materials and the creative process to invite healing, express emotions, and experience spiritual connection. Fox and Feather in Guilford, Connecticut specializes in the treatment of eating disorders, trauma, anxiety, depression, and grief. They treat female-identifying clients and members of the LGBTQIA+ community, ages 12 and up. What sets this art therapy practice apart is their use of art as a form of magic and emotional alchemy. Call today at 860-575-4500 for your free 15-minute phone consultation. You can learn more and meet the team at foxfeatherhealingarts.com, or you can email at Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at foxfeatherhealingarts.com. For everybody, not just in terms of Soji, but for everybody. We're always in a process of learning and growing and changing, and it's just this this topic seems to hook people into an unrealistic expectation of, no, I'm uncomfortable with that. Just make a decision now and tell me. Right. That's not realistic. There's so much in this short film that I want us to talk about. It starts with Jan in full male mode, complete with the bushy stash, shows up in a hotel and is walking in with the bellhop. And the first thing that happens is an encounter that I didn't catch the first time, but it's an encounter that to an average viewer might seem like the male gaze, right? So Jan encounters this woman sitting in the lobby, and she is put together. She's got the makeup and the hair and the outfit, and she's got that like 40s noir cigarette thing going. And Jan notices. And I think for somebody who has never been closeted, it looks like an example of that sort of icky male gaze where he's, here, let me light your cigarette for you, sweetie. But that's not what's going on in Jan's mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had to represent, I don't think we could have walked into the hotel room not knowing who Jan was out in the real world. I think it was really important to establish, it's a very brief moment, but I think we had to see Jan as a full male in their everyday life. And that is such a common occurrence, that male gaze, the leering, but what a great opportunity for Jan to like take some notes, and and you're right, what appears to the audience as flirting is really Jan like sizing up, like
I could pull that outfit off. I couldn't do that.
Right, exactly. Well, and next to Jan is a cart filled with clothes that he's about to get to go try on. So he's looking at how she's put together. And even all the way into the elevator, he just continues to stare at her. And you're right, it appears to be the male gaze, but really he's just can't wait to get up to that room.
He's taking notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to do that. Okay. When I was closeted, I would be in a public space. I grew up in the era of hanging out at the mall, and and I would watch women, and I would think exactly what I just said. Oh, okay, I could never get away with that outfit. I bet I could. I bet I could wear that. I wonder how you get that makeup look. How do you do that?
I love it.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I agree. I agree 100%. It's so studied. It's just something you just it's like coveting in a way. It's like you notice it everywhere you go. You constantly taking notes and studying and hoping and longing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the short, most of the short takes place in Jan's hotel room, and we don't know. Well, we assume that we're there so that Jan can have this private moment in this room. And we don't know until the end that there's actually a larger purpose to why this hotel room on this particular night. But we do spend most of the time with Jan getting dressed, being dressed. Robert, there's an amazing shot that I've got to ask about where Jan's wife calls, and
Yes.
it breaks the illusion for Jan.
That's
And
actually one of my favorite shots in the whole
oh my
film.
God, it's this
Absolutely.
360 pan around the room, which is loaded with mirrors, and we want to talk about
Hmm.
mirrors in a second. How did you do that so that you've got the 360 and it's showing us all the elements of the room, but we don't ever see the camera in all the mirrors?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite shots too, and it's one that I fought for. We had a wonderful cinematographer, Rob Senska, and we were very, very intentional about what we wanted to do. I knew in that moment, later on we'll discover that a lot of what we see of Jan is a fantasy, and this phone call from the wife breaks the fantasy. Jan doesn't actually look as she thinks she looks, so I needed to get away from just looking at her during this phone call. So I came up with this idea to pan the entire room so that the audience could A, not see that that illusion was broken, but B, see what's actually going on in the room. I think it bolsters the lie to see all the stuff strewn around and what's actually happening, the fingernail polish on the dresser. I was told we could not do it over and over again. It would be impossible, because it's one man and a camera. We were scrappy. We didn't have a big budget. The first dolly shot of the film is our cinematographer riding on a luggage cart. We just made stuff happen. So he had a Dana dolly, and he, by hand, took that shot. So he started on Jan and held the camera and spun it around. He had to cross under the dolly. It was on Apple boxes. He had to cross under the dolly and keep it moving, and then go all the way around and finish on the mirror in the end of it all. So it was very, very strategic, but we ended up making it work. We took 2 stabs at it and got it right, and I couldn't be happier. I absolutely love it.
It's so beautiful. It's really one of my favorite cinematic moments in the whole thing, technically, but then also just the symbolism of hearing the lie and seeing the truth. Where you're hearing him tell her this, tale about why he shaved his mustache and da 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 da, and even the timbre of the voice, dropping down into the male register more, and then you're just seeing her world, her preference, her, existence in that moment, where she really is and what's really going on, and starting on Jan and sort of ending up in the reflection that she sees and that she likes to see in the mirror. I don't know. It was just, there were so many things layered on top of each other in that moment.
Another thing that really struck with my lived experience was that at a certain point, and I think it's motivated by something Jan was watching on the TV, gets herself ready and just goes out into the hallway and back. And it's just this test of Can I exist in the real world? Could I, because Jan, as we see, is confined to this dark, and it's a nice enough hotel room, I suppose, but all the curtains have to be drawn and it's dark. There's actually a really lovely scene of Jan getting ready, and the only light coming in is through the peephole, where it's just plays off how dark and removed from the real world this existence is. So she goes out and like walks a few paces down the hallway and then comes back, and that terrifies her.
Yeah.
Well, Claire, I think anybody who has transitioned can remember the first time they set out of the house dressed as their true self, and how simultaneously exhilarating and horrifying it is, because you just have no idea how the world's going to take you, and that, I remember it like it was yesterday. I had been on stages in women's clothes for years, for a decade. I had performed as a female, but I wasn't living as one. But when I stepped out in everyday clothes to go to dinner with some people, I can still feel and remember that moment like it was yesterday.
The hypervigilance, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Who's watching
Yeah.
me? Who's seeing me? What are they thinking?
Or you're so happy, but at the same time so terrified.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
so amazing that dichotomy, that, two things like that can exist in your body at the same time. It's one of those rare things that I could think of, but yeah.
As I say, motivated by a scene in a movie, Jan decides to order room service as sort of a test. Can I pull this off? Can I have the bellhop come in and deliver the champagne and not have it turn into something horrible? And Robert, again, that is this really interesting split screen shot where the bellhop is in the mirror and Jan is in the doorway trying to hide.
Yeah. So that's both of those are a reflection of the vanity mirror. So again, we were super intentional. We shot listed everything. And I told everyone in our last production meeting, I'm a theater kid, and the way things work is you rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse and you plan, and then you have to let it go, because that's where the magic is. We have to be open to seeing the magic that's going to happen inside this room. And that was just one of those magical moments of being in the room and being in the right place at the right time for Rob to catch that reflection. And it worked out perfectly, because they are, it puts them close together on screen, but they're truly really far apart. From Jan's point of view, there's a very close proximity, and it's just enough for her to have a taste of being around somebody, but still, keeping them at bay. And he never really sees her. So she could have, again, that little moment of exhilaration, which is probably fueled by a little overconfidence. Like maybe when she orders it, she doesn't realize this is going to be a reality.
Yeah, that someone's actually in the show.
That someone's going to be in the room.
Overconfidence and a couple of whiskeys.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it turned out to be a fun shot there too.
You and I talked during the Out Film Festival, and I had seen it 2 or 3 times by then, and I just rewatched it for this conversation, and it just dawned on me for the first time that the bellhop probably doesn't need the lies. The bellhop probably knows the meeting is going on upstairs and knows and doesn't need this whole, oh, it's my anniversary and I bought her some nice clothes and yeah, that's what's going on. Yeah. Here's an extra 20. Make sure my wife is taken care of.
Right. I want all my audiences to be you, just in every seat.
Exactly.
B, you're spot on. I mean, this is a safe space, which is the underlying truth of this whole thing. For everything Jan puts herself through, the fear of walking out that door, the breaking the fantasy and not being happy with the way she looks, is that she's in a safe space and she's going to a safer space. There's community waiting for her. So for me, that's what underlies everything. And the story of everything I went through therapy for is that we're safe. We just have to like walk out the door, right? And it's going to be okay, right? So that's a wonderful observation. The bellhop absolutely knows everything that's going on and probably would protect them.
Hi, folks. It's Claire interrupting. I'll keep this brief. Please consider donating to support the show. If you go to transqat.com, that's TRANSQAT.com, hit the support button and then donate. You can also visit the Transqat store and support us that way. And if you're a business or an organization, please consider sponsoring the show. We have a few slots left for season 3, but we will also be looking for sponsors for season 4. Thank you for your support.
It made me want to go back. I will go back after this and rewatch it again from the bellhop's point of view.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's his job to make sure the guests are happy.
Right.
You know, he's paid to make sure you have what you need and that you're happy. He's doing his job. So he's not going to do anything to jeopardize that.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to be professional because it is a nice hotel. It's not, you know, a sleazy roach motel somewhere. It's a nice hotel. And, you know, he's just doing his job.
Yeah, it has, according to the bellhop, the latest in television and radio technology.
It's a fancy hotel.
Yeah.
You know, and also, I think this is a regular occurrence. Charlie up in the room has these little meetups and probably, I'm not going to say every month, but every once in a while does this. And this is probably, you know, a regular occurrence. So I think, you know, and if I could backtrack, that's something I had to learn along the way too. I didn't know about Casa Susanna in the beginning. So Brooklyn asking me the question, who is this person? What are they? Set me on a long journey of like trying to discover who they were. And along the way, I found all of those pictures. I started Googling words, cross-dresser in the 50s, trans person in the 50s, you know, and then I start to see all these pictures. And then they all started to come together in Casa Susanna. And again, one of the things I had to come to terms with, because we have obliterated our history, is that there were safe places and people could be happy, and they were. And why not let her go there? You know, I think anyone watching, I get a comment a lot of people are so scared for her walking down the hall. They're so scared. Some people think she's going to go up to the roof. But what a wonderful thing, if anyone could just realize, is that people had each other and had community and were happy, you know, and let's have more of that in the world.
Yeah. That fear when she finally goes out into the hall and she's going to do it. She's going to go up to, I think it's the 9th floor. Presses the elevator button and then realizes, oh, no, I might end up in the elevator with somebody, and takes the stairs instead out of fear. And I know that just all-encompassing anxiety of needing to plan every little detail because you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, did you ever experience that? I think going back to your
course.
First night out, like, I love the story of going to the restaurant and going to the hostess. Like what that felt like having to be like, what that must have felt like walking up to there.
I think more than an isolated incident, I think for a long time at the very beginning, restrooms gave me a lot of anxiety. You know, it was just, you know, I needed to be like everybody else, but at the same time, I was having to, you know, go into the other bathroom and, you know, or I would be very, very happy if there were single-use restrooms, like where it's just a, you know, the male or female sign and there's 2 of them and you just pick whichever one's empty, right? And a lot of restaurants do that now. That always relieved a lot of anxiety because I knew I didn't have to worry about anything. And I never had an issue. I've never had an issue, but that anxiety was there a lot. You know, just walking down the street, sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen. Is somebody going to just get some wild idea in their head and decide to get mean, or, again, haven't had a problem, but the anxiety's still there. Even today, it's still sometimes there. It lingers, but it's lessened to a great degree.
Well, given the rhetoric in the country right now, how could you not? You know, how
Oh yeah, yeah, it's exponentially worse right now. I tried to stay off social media entirely just for my sanity.
in would have been 1991, I taught in Metairie for a year. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think we talked about this,
Yeah.
but I used that year, it was just for a 1 year position. And I used that opportunity to see if I could exist in the world. I'm in New Orleans. And,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like, yeah, you're not going to get a better opportunity to explore this side of yourself. So bleep and do it.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I reached out to the 1991 version of this group that is at the end of your short film. They met monthly in a hotel. It was not as nice as Jan's hotel. It was not as seedy as it could have been, but that it was that same scene of this mix of people, some of whom were well along in the journey toward transitioning, some of whom had no intention of that, and who to an objective observer might have seemed kind of ridiculous, like beefy longshoreman in a dress, and some of them were like me, somewhere in the middle, and just hoping to make sense of it. But I remember that whole dynamic of I've got to get out of the car and get into the hotel and get to the room to be in that safe space. And there were times when other people would interact with me in ways that I was like, oh, shit, I'm not safe here, am I?
I was just gonna say, I think my heart just exploded a little bit. I mean, my anxiety about this is that I could tell this story authentically, and it could be, you know, and to hear you have went through the same experience is just, oh my gosh, means so much to me. I mean, I really worry that I was not, that I may not have been authentic, or how it comes across, but I'm so glad you could relate and experience that.
Well, it's really difficult line for you to tread, because there are people who identify as trans who look down on people who identify as cross-dressers. There are, in the same way that there are radical feminists who look down on trans women. And it's
Yeah.
this ugly chain of picking on the guy behind you. And so it makes your job of telling the story a little more difficult, because some trans people are going to look at that and go, "Ugh, that's a cross dresser."
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think to a modern audience, and this is an assumption, I haven't had the conversation, but I don't feel like being out in the world with this film that I click with younger trans people or the younger community. But when I reach a more worldly audience, an older audience, that there's a better connection. And I'm not just talking about trans people, even straight people, cis people who can relate or would have known someone, like there are all these connections out in the world that I wasn't expecting. But the one big one I have not made that I feel strong are younger people. And I think it's because they have a different worldview, and there needs to be a label, and there needs to be a completion to this story, and rightfully so, they need that.
Yeah. Well, there was Pose, Pose, Ryan Murphy's show
So
isn't
good.
set today. It's so good, right? I mean, just to see all those, trans people playing trans characters who understand what everybody, goes through. And, that's not a current story. It's not today. It is, but it isn't, because it's, dealing with the 80s and the AIDS epidemic and all that stuff that was going on at the time, and how it was still sequestered to safe spaces like, the ballroom scene and things like
Hmm.
that. Um, where I think Jan it's dipping a toe in a pool that's even earlier than that, where it's a history lesson in a sense, of where we were, where we don't want to continue to be. So I think that to expand it, like Robert was saying, a little bit more and flesh it out more, where people could connect to it more fully and understand it more as, an era that has changed somewhat. We're still in a struggle with it, obviously, but it's not quite like it was.
I forget at which point, there are a couple of moments when Jan is, as we say, sort of pulled out of the illusion. And one of them just struck me as the Clark Kent moment, because Jan gets scared and realizes all of the insecurities start building up. And so she puts on male Jan's glasses in front of the mirror, and it shatters the image. You suddenly see the man who walked into the hotel, not the woman in the pretty blue dress that we've been watching. Was Superman on your mind at all?
Actually, no, but I'm going to use that. Not at all. But you're right. I think I needed a way to reintroduce, or blend these two people in shattering this illusion. And there just wasn't a better way than for her to have a good look at herself through those glasses. And you kind of see them lying about in the room every now and then. And in the end, she kind of scruffs them, bumps them, but they're kind of around. But it was, I just needed her to she wears glasses, so she doesn't have great vision. So that aids in her, softening the view. But I love that observation. That's really great.
Because I'm sure that Lyle is doing something with his face in that moment to convey the shift from the feminine persona back into the sort of fearful masculine one. But for me, I look at it and it was amazing. It's just like, oh, yeah, that can't be Superman. He's wearing glasses.
I love it. That's amazing.
Tell me about Lyle and how Lyle approached this role, because there's a lot of demands.
Absolutely. I'm so happy we found Lyle. We did a lot of auditioning. We narrowed it down to several people. Brooklyn was always a part of that process. And in the end of it all, I think we had 3 people. I sent tapes to Brooklyn, and she responded to Lyle. And I don't remember the exact words. There was something like, I feel like I lived that experience, or I feel like
he had a honest vulnerability that was so there, even in an audition, that it was like my heart was touched. Like it was just something immediate when I saw his tape. And the 3 gentlemen, I don't remember the other 2's names, but I do remember I saw all 3 videos, and they were all very good auditions. There was just something that Lyle brought to the table. He understood the sensitivity and the emotion of it that I connected with, and it was just a no-brainer.
Yeah, everyone who saw Lyle just fell in love. And early on, a lot of, my husband's a casting director, my friends are casting directors. Lyle's name came up a lot, but I had to do my due diligence, and ultimately it came down to him. But I think the big moment for me, obviously he had a good audition. Brooklyn responded to it. That was a big deal. We sat down in the callback, and here's this man who has a wife and 3 kids, Italian, Ricardo, a family man. And he sat down in the room and just, I don't think without even thinking about it, just eased into this femininity. Like his body relaxed, and he was able to cross his legs at the knee, and it was so comfortable, and I think that, that's what acting is. And I think that's something that a lot of people have a hard time letting go of. So he just clicked on all the right levels. So we cast Lyle and had a big meeting with him. We talked for a very long time. I told him the story about Brooklyn and how we wrote the story. We cried a lot. It meant a lot to him to tell this story. And, one thing I said in that meeting was, you may get pushback because you're a cis male, you're straight, playing this role. And he said, "Oh, I thought it was mine because I have a wife and kids." I mean, he's so sensitive and wonderful. And so I told him I've done everything I could with Jan. I have done everything I can with this character. It's yours now. Like, you have to give it life. And in my head, as a director, being an actor my entire life, I thought, oh, I get an actor, to myself. And we cast him very early because, again, being a theater kid, I wanted time for this to soak into his bones and, like, for him to really know this character. And so I didn't hear from him for a long time. He went and he would send me texts with a question here and there, clarifying things. And he showed up on set just completely on point. We had 4 days, we had no money, and time is precious. He was so focused and so prepared. I mean, we just got a lot of safety shots because he was just so on the money, and we just wanted to keep rolling through it without, a lot of disruption. So he was remarkable.
Transqat is on the air. The program will be broadcast on WESU 88.1 FM, Middletown, Connecticut, beginning Tuesday, September 9th. Transqat has acquired the coveted 1 to 2 a.m. slot.
And there was much rejoicing.
You can listen either very late Monday night or ridiculously early Tuesday morning, depending on your perspective. It's an honor to be part of WESU's programming. The station's first official broadcast was on November 9th, 1939. That means they're only a few years away from their 90th anniversary. So, if you find yourself awake and within 90 miles or so of Wesleyan's Exley Science Center, tune in to WESU 88.1 FM.
Brooklyn, were you on set for those 4 days?
I was not, actually. They were on a tight budget, and I was in Florida, so it was one of those things where I worked with Robert up until, and then I saw things after it was in the in the can, so to speak, and just and then we kind of kept working, going back and forth from there.
Yeah, you had big part in the editing. I think you saw every single cut, which is hard to do. To see that first cut, it's like, what is happening?
Yeah. And it's an interesting process to see. I don't know, Claire, if you've ever seen it, but like the process where you just put all the pieces end to end, right? And it's so rough. The sound isn't leveled. There's no music. There's and it's such an odd thing to see. And then to watch it evolve and slowly become what everybody now knows as This Is Jan, and watch it. It just continues to grow and get better and better and better and better in that process. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I had to go for a long drive after the first cut. I was like, what did I do?
I've made such a mistake.
Well, no, it just feels so odd and messy because, you see the story fluid in your head and you read it on paper and you just see how it all works. But until it's refined, it just looks so herky-jerky and, it doesn't have all the layers that make it what it is.
And what a big difference in music. We had a wonderful composer, and sound makes. I mean, sound just changes everything. Both of our guys, our music composer and our sound guy, were wonderful. They did a lot of hard work to make this as beautiful as it is.
There were 2 songs that really spoke to the scenes that they're playing in, and I was just wondering if they were real songs or if it was something that was composed. So there's a moment once Jan is fully in on femme, as we used to say. There's a song on the radio. Where is it? Oh yeah, "Step It Up and Go, You Can't Stay Here." And then it's a very similar lyric in the song when Jan leaves the room to go up to the ninth floor, where it's very clearly commenting on the action. Are those real songs, or did they?
They are, yeah, they're both real songs. We worked with a music supervisor and went through a process of looking at music. And originally I wanted Laverne Baker songs, but we could not afford them. But I think everything worked out as it was. What a fun process to get to listen to tons of music and a catalog and find those words. Like, what a better thing to say. You've got to step it up and go.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah.
Can't stay here. That was a whole process. And then the other music we actually composed, Elias Ransom. It's actually my best friend's son-in-law. And I just saw all these, he's a savant. He's a jazz savant. And when we made the trailer for our fundraising, I asked him if he would compose it and I told him, I was like, it'd be an audition. And if you want to, if you'll want to do the whole movie, we'll see how it goes. And again, I envisioned like this Dinah Washington thing. It was just Jan getting dressed. You just see the legs. And I let him go. And then he came back and he was like, okay, just like, listen to me. I thought it should be, because I gave him no notes. I was like, you do whatever you want. And he's like, I thought maybe it should be like an Ella Fitzgerald or, like a female crooner. And then it dawned on me that it's a waltz. She's dancing with herself.
Oh.
I cried all day. All day. Like, what an amazing observation and artistic decision from like a 22-year-old straight boy. Like, it just out of this world. So when we came back around to scoring the film, he got really into it, and he was like trying to like John Williams, this like score a film, and he was working, and his wife, who I've known since she was a baby, was like, "It's the waltz. It's the waltz." And we went back to it, and we just kept it super simple and did variations of the same thing. So there are times when she's getting ready that it's super melodic. During the conflict with herself, it's warped. So we just find different ways. In the beginning, you may not notice it, but it doesn't quite fit, like his clothes, like but it's all the same song. And in the end of it all, I realized it's like a music box. You could almost put it in a wind-up box with Jan spinning in the middle. So I'm really happy with the way that all turned out.
I love, Robert, that you made the observation, about the clothes not fitting, because it's funny. My ex-husband and his partner were at the screening in New Orleans, and afterward, that was the one thing Todd said, was he goes, I thought it was really cool that her clothes weren't fitted, that it wasn't made for her body, because it wouldn't have made much sense. And I honestly hadn't even thought about that until he said that. And I was like, oh, yeah.
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 That is
well, speaking of the clothes, the film comes to a culmination with an argument between male Jan and female Jan. But male Jan at that point is an empty suit of clothes, literally, on the bed, that is populated by the fears and the anxieties in Jan's head. And I wanted to go, if we could, through the things that the male side of the personality throws at female Jan, and says you're always trying to validate what's wrong. You're a glutton for punishment. You love the victim mentality. And I take no joy in running you down over and over for these abnormal proclivities. I was an expert. I was a PhD in running myself down. And because all of that stress that is visually there in your short about go out in the hall, come back. Did anybody see me? What does the bellhop think? it just breaks you down over
Absolutely.
time.
And I think if we could, I think it's the most personal thing to me is this moment of, it was everything to me is to build this whole conflict, because it is my life. I've done over the past few years a lot of therapy to break myself of it. I think it's a very common issue. I've spent my life running myself down. And so it's probably the most personal thing to me. And I hoped that it would be the most relatable, that anybody could say, oh, I've been there, that we could, and we wrote that. I had a couple of writing partners, and originally I kind of thought it would probably be a little more, I don't know what the right terminology is, maybe a little more easy and natural, the language, but Hunter really wanted it to be staunch and like proclivities, and I think in the end of it all, it was really important, because not that the writing is ridiculous, but the tone and the words are just kind of seem ridiculous if you step back and look at it. Jan in the chair is being reasonable. She's pleading. She's got her head about her. This other thing is like a weird monster.
There's an affect
Yes.
to that shadowy character that is missing in Jan, which is the complete reverse of what we think we've been seeing, that this man is putting on the artificiality of this transformation, and what the hell is wrong with you? This isn't healthy.
And she says that. She says, you've been walking around pretending your whole life, just basically give me this one moment. And ultimately he's just, I think it sounds weird too. The thing in my head as a director is that it's just, you say it so much over and over again that it sounds, it's like reciting lines.
So we actually started by alluding to this. Do you have plans for this character beyond the short? What's the status of that?
We're in a creative process right now. We laid out a lot. We've basically developed all of our characters and season arc for what we're, I think right now, calling a limited series. I think we're probably all at a stopping part, pushed our creativity. In my head, in Brooklyn, you could tell me where you're at, is that sometimes I think you have to let things breathe. I think we did a lot of creativity. We built some really wonderful characters and some really wonderful stories. And sometimes you just have to step back and see what you find walking down the street, if that makes sense. I think we're all attached to certain characters. I think we all have a connection to different characters, which is really wonderful. I think the next big step for us is I think we'll need to hire a writer, like a television writer, someone with experience in that world, to pull everything we have together. Brooklyn?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm with you in that. I think we dove in and we swum around in the deep end. We pulled everything together. And now we have it all. It just needs to be somewhat, like you said, organized in that format of television, an episodic situation, And
I think for any of us,
I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I think for any of us, we could tell the story like we know it, like we lived it, or like with Jan, I could tell that story. I just need the help of the technicality of laying it out into a script.
Well, the beats are different, right? If you've got a 17-minute short, the beats are different than if you've got a 55-minute episode of television, and it's different than a 90-minute, 120-minute feature. You've got to hit different beats.
Sure, and then you have to lay that out over 8 episodes. You have to draw the story out and tempt and tease and let things culminate over time. So,
just a suggestion. You don't have to listen to this, but when you do that, don't have the queen go crazy and her dragons just sort of back her up at the end. That it doesn't work. It's a bad idea. Just so if you were thinking of that, of just saying, "Oh yeah, she's been insane the whole time."
There we go.
Don't do that.
There it goes, Brooklyn.
Start over. Darn it! Get my eraser out.
Yeah.
Delete.
Delete.
Would is the short available at this point? Would folks be able to go listen to this after listening to us talk about it for an hour?
That's a great question. I think with our licensing, we can't just have it living out in the world right now. It's in the it's in the festival circuit. But let me see if there's some way I can work around that. Maybe we could have a special screening for your audience. Also, it'll be a part of the New Orleans Film Festival that has an online version as well, so it'll be accessible there. I hope to wrap up the film festival circuit and start finding distribution in the new year. We'll do a year on the film festival circuit and then move on.
When is the New Orleans Festival?
The second to last weekend of October. I'm not sure the dates, but the weekend before Halloween.
Yeah, I think it's around the 25th, I believe. Wasn't that what we said, Robert?
Yeah, we don't have our screening date yet, but I think it's available online for maybe a week there.
I want the last word to go to the two of you. What should the takeaway to this short film be? What would you like people to leave the theater thinking, feeling?
For me, I think what I would like Jan to offer people is an insight into, I don't want to use the word struggle, but the journey of somebody who is exploring their gender identity and themselves. What it's not just putting on clothes and walking down the street. It's so much more complex than that. And that it isn't an easy decision. And I would like for people to realize how important understanding gender identity is, because the younger you can do it, the earlier in life you can find yourself, in ways less complicated it can be, because, here we see Jan married, children, this whole life that he has created that is now making things very complicated in finding her way back to her true self. So I think that to see how it used to be, hopefully we can move forward from that and have a better understanding that it's important to figure out who you are. And it's important to go through that as soon as you're comfortable doing so. But hopefully before life is so complicated that it might prevent you from doing it, So I think that is the one thing that I would like for people to have an understanding of.
I agree with that. And I think from my point of view, I wanted to create an authentic character in an authentic story. And my hope would be that anyone could see a little bit of themselves in there. I don't think Jan is in every man or in every woman, but I think that there's a bit of humanity that anyone could latch onto at any point in the story. So I hope, because I think that's where connections are made. I think that's how our movements break ground, is whenever people connect with their family or their friends, or identify in ways that they can't through whatever social, media or news is feeding them ideas. But whenever you connect with something or someone on a personal level, you start to want to have a better understanding of it.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Robert and Brooklyn, and I hope you did, consider checking out similar themed episodes. Number 46 was a conversation with Mauricio Pita and Christopher Cunetto about their short film Safe Word. I spoke with the creators of the new musical A Complicated Woman back in episode 55, and the cast and crew of the short film Sorority joined me in episode 88. Before I go, I need to share some sad news. If you watch the YouTube version of this show, you know that I am regularly joined on camera by Sun, the chief financial officer of Transqat Enterprises. Sometimes she's climbing all over me. Sometimes it's just her tail performing a ribbon dance in front of my face. She had an uncanny ability to express her need for attention and affection when I was on camera. Sun died this week. It was sudden and unexpected. Sun was my warrior princess. She was rail thin and without fear, Sun was a shoulder cat, often leaping from the floor up onto my back to settle in while I worked on a jigsaw puzzle. I named her for the formidable character Sun Bach on the show Sense8. They had that same unforgiving glare. Her purr was music, and sometimes I wished I was a musician so I could preserve it in a song. I am comforted in this loss by knowing that Sun died in a warm, safe place, a home where she was very much loved. Not everyone has that luxury. Goodbye, my friend. Thanks for sharing my life for that part of the ride. This has been Transqat. I'm Claire McCarthy. Thank you for listening. Let's talk soon.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Claire McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.